The first thing I remember is the sound of the car engine fading into the distance. Slow at first, then faster, then disappearing completely until all I could hear was the wind pushing against the empty highway. I didn't understand what was happening. One second I was sitting in the back seat, arguing softly, trying to keep my voice steady, and the next, I was standing alone, dust blowing across my shoes, watching the man I trusted most drive away with his mother recording me through the open window as if my fear was something to laugh at. That moment didn't just scare me, it changed everything. People always talk about red flags, about signs you should notice early in a marriage, but no one tells you how easy it is to ignore them when you love someone. My husband, Daniel, was charming to the world, calm, confident, the type of man who made promises with steady eyes that made you want to believe him. His mother, Mrs. Grace, was the opposite, sharp-tongued, protective of her son in a way that often made me feel like an outsider in my own home. But even with the tension, even with the quiet digs and cold stares, I never imagined things could reach a point where they would leave me stranded miles away from anyone, with no phone, no water, no idea how far the next town was. I never imagined a moment where survival would become my only focus. That day had started like any other, peaceful enough that I didn't sense anything was off. Daniel told me his mother wanted to go for a drive, family bonding, he called it. I didn't want to go, but I wanted to be supportive, so I said yes. I still remember how his mom smiled when I got in the car, a tight, clipped smile that didn't reach her eyes. I tried not to think too much of it. I tried to believe that maybe today would be different, that maybe she would finally try to understand me. But instead, the deeper we drove into open roads and empty fields, the more their whispers turned into loud conversations, and the more their smiles twisted into something else. It started with simple comments, casual, almost harmless. Then suddenly the tone changed. His mother began blaming me for things I never did, accusing me of disrespecting her, of turning her son against her. Daniel didn't defend me. He just drove, gripping the wheel tightly while she spoke like she was unloading years of bottled anger. Every word felt like a push, a shove meant to corner me. I stayed calm, I tried to explain, but every explanation was twisted, thrown back in my face like proof of guilt. I didn't understand why they were acting this way. I didn't understand why Daniel stayed silent. The first time I asked to go back home, his mother laughed. The second time, she pulled out her phone and pointed the camera at me. She told me she wanted to capture my behavior, as if wanting to leave an uncomfortable situation was some kind of crime. Daniel said nothing. Not a single word. I remember staring at him through the mirror, searching for the man I married, but all I saw was a face turned away, eyes refusing to meet mine. The third time I asked, the car suddenly slowed. My heart lifted for a second. I thought he was finally listening. I thought he was finally choosing to protect me instead of feeding into the tension. But when he stopped in the middle of the long, empty highway, there were no comforting words, no explanations. Just a sharp command from his mother telling me to get out and walk. I laughed at first because I thought it was a cruel joke. But when Daniel unlocked the doors without looking back, something inside me broke. I stepped out slowly, still hoping he would change his mind, still believing he wouldn't actually leave me behind. But then the doors slammed, dust rose around the tires, and his mother's phone stayed pointed at me like she was filming a movie scene she had been waiting to create. His voice was the last thing I heard, cold, distant, nothing like the man I knew. And then they were gone. The silence after they left felt heavier than the heat pressing down on my skin. The highway stretched endlessly in both directions, nothing but open road and dry land. My throat tightened. My heartbeat felt too loud. I knew I couldn't panic. I knew panic wouldn't help me find safety or shelter. But the shock was overwhelming. I didn't even have my bag, my phone, my wallet, everything was still in the car because I never imagined needing to carry them. I never imagined the people who said they loved me would leave me with nothing. I took a step forward, not knowing where I was going, only knowing I had to keep moving. The sun was brutal, and with every minute the distance seemed to stretch even farther. I kept replaying their faces in my mind, my husband's silence, his mother's steady recording as if my pain meant nothing to her. I didn't know if they planned this. I didn't know if this was a moment of anger or something deeper, something darker. But I knew one thing clearly, I had to survive. I had to keep walking even if my legs shook beneath me. Cars passed occasionally, but none slowed down. My voice cracked from calling out, my arms grew tired from waving. I kept telling myself not to give up, not to let fear defeat me. And with each step, a new realization hit me. This wasn't just abandonment. This wasn't just a cruel prank. Something had shifted long before this moment, something dangerous that I had ignored because I trusted the wrong people. My marriage wasn't a partnership. It was a stage, A performance where I played the role they wanted while they wrote the script behind my back. Hours felt like days, and the more I walked, the more the truth unfolded in pieces I hadn't seen before. There were signs, small ones, subtle ones, that now made perfect sense. But understanding them didn't change the fact that I was alone, exhausted, and trying to find a way to stay safe until someone stopped, someone noticed, or I reached somewhere with help. I kept walking step by shaky step until suddenly, far ahead, I saw a truck slow down. My heart jumped. Was this help or another danger? I didn't know. I didn't have a choice. Every muscle in my body told me to be cautious, but every instinct told me this might be the only chance I had. And as the truck rolled closer, dust swirling in the air, I braced myself, because whatever happened next would decide everything. The moment the door opened, everything changed again. But that part of the story comes next. The truck slowed until it came to a stop a few feet ahead of me, the engine humming softly in the quiet air. My chest rose and fell too fast, my legs trembling from both fear and exhaustion. For a moment I considered turning back, even though there was nothing behind me except miles of empty road. The door creaked open and a tall man stepped out, wiping his hands on a cloth as if he'd just finished fixing something. He wasn't smiling, but he wasn't frowning either. His face was calm, steady, the kind of expression that made you feel seen without feeling judged. "You all right?" he asked, voice low and careful. My throat felt too dry to answer. I nodded, though I knew I didn't look even close to all right. Before I could think of anything to say, he stepped a little closer but kept enough distance to make me feel safe. He glanced down the highway as if expecting someone to appear. When he saw nothing, he looked back at me. "Did your car break down?" he asked. The question hit me harder than I expected. It reminded me of everything I was trying not to think about, the way Daniel drove off, the way his mother filmed me like I was entertainment, the echo of their laughter as the car disappeared. I forced myself to breathe before answering. "No," I whispered. "They left me." His eyes shifted slightly, not in shock, but in concern. "Who's they?" "My husband, and his mother." He blinked slowly, letting the words settle. He didn't rush to speak, didn't ask anything invasive. He just waited, giving me space to explain when I was ready. I appreciated that more than he knew. But part of me still hesitated. I didn't know him. I didn't know if trusting him was safe. Yet standing there alone on the highway wasn't an option either. Can I sit in the truck for a minute?" I asked softly. He nodded and stepped back, giving me room. I climbed into the passenger seat, sinking into the worn fabric. The smell of engine oil mixed with something warm, maybe coffee from an old thermos on the dashboard. The moment my body hit the seat, a wave of dizziness washed over me. The man got back into the driver's side but didn't start driving. He placed his hands on the steering wheel and waited. "My name's Kareem," he said. "I won't take you anywhere you don't want to go. Tell me what you need." The kindness in his tone almost made me cry. I swallowed the lump in my throat and stared out the window. The road stretched endlessly, glowing under the sun. It felt unreal to think that just hours ago I left my house expecting a normal day, not this. Not abandonment. Not fear. "I just need to get somewhere safe," I murmured. "Somewhere with people." He nodded once, then turned the key. The truck rumbled forward, steady and slow. I leaned back, exhaustion pulling at my eyes, but my mind refused to rest. Everything replayed like a broken video. My husband's silence, his mother's phone, the way they looked at me like I was the problem instead of the person begging them to stop. Kareem drove quietly for a few minutes before speaking again, his voice gentle. "You don't have to tell me everything right now. But, if you want to talk, I'm here." I opened my mouth to thank him, but instead, something unexpected slipped out. I don't know why they did it. Maybe I wasn't speaking to him. Maybe I was speaking to myself. But the more I said it, the more the confusion inside me twisted deeper. For most people, leaving someone on a highway would be unthinkable. But with Daniel and his mother, the boundaries had been slowly shifting for months. The cold comments. The sudden arguments. The nights he stopped talking to me for reasons he never explained. The more I looked back, the more the pieces made sense, and the more frightening the truth became. I hadn't married Daniel thinking life would be perfect. I knew relationships had ups and downs. But what I didn't expect was how quickly his mother's influence would seep into every corner of our marriage. In the beginning she was pleasant enough, overly involved but not harmful. She called often, visited often, always checking on us. At first I thought she was just close to her son. I admired that. I tried to fit into her world. But the more time passed, the more I realized she didn't want me to fit in. She wanted me out. She wanted things the way they were before I came along. She wanted her son to herself. There were days Daniel would come home and treat me differently, his mood perfectly reflecting whatever tone his mother used that morning. She was warm, he was warm. She was angry, he was distant. She was suspicious, he questioned everything I did. I tried to talk to him about it, but every conversation ended the same. My mom is just protective. She doesn't mean it. You're overthinking. Maybe I wasn't. Kareem drove past dry fields and long stretches of telephone wires. I watched the scenery blur, my thoughts spiraling into places I had avoided for too long. The truth was, this wasn't the first time things had gone too far. It was just the first time it was impossible to ignore. There was the time his mother accused me of hiding her keys, insisting I wanted to make her look foolish. Daniel searched the whole house, even though I told him I had nothing to do with it. The keys were eventually found in her own coat pocket, but she never apologized. She only muttered, maybe she moved them back. There was the time she showed up at our house unannounced and insisted on staying for 3 weeks. She rearranged everything, criticized everything, even told Daniel I wasn't mature enough to run a home. When I confronted her gently, she cried dramatically until Daniel comforted her and told me I needed to respect his mother more. And then there were the quiet moments, small comments meant to look harmless. You're lucky my son married you. A woman should know how to listen. You're too emotional. My son deserves peace. The worst part was that Daniel slowly adopted her tone. He used to defend me. He used to love me openly and confidently. But somewhere along the way something changed. Maybe it was subtle. Maybe it happened overnight. But the man who once held my hand in public stopped reaching for it. The man who used to surprise me with kindness stopped noticing when I cried. And now I was sitting in a stranger's truck, wondering how everything had fallen apart so quietly, so gradually that I didn't notice until it was too late. Kareem glanced at me briefly. Where were you headed today? Before all this? I sighed. Nowhere special. Just a drive. He tightened his grip on the wheel slightly. A drive that ends on an empty highway isn't an accident. The words lingered. He wasn't wrong. But why? I whispered. What did they want from leaving me there? What did that video even mean? A chill moved through me. The phone. His mother recording me. The way she aimed the camera like she'd been waiting for the moment. Like she wanted proof of something that wasn't true. What if the video wasn't for me? What if it wasn't about me at all? Kareem drove over a small bump, and the jolt snapped me out of my thoughts. We're getting close to town, he said. You'll be safe there. Safe. I wasn't sure what that word meant anymore. But before we reached the town, before I could truly process everything, my stomach dropped as I glanced into the side mirror. A car appeared behind us. A car I knew very, very well. Daniel's car. And he was gaining speed. The moment I recognized Daniel's car in the mirror, my pulse jumped painfully. My back straightened and the air in my lungs turned sharp. I wasn't ready to face him. I wasn't even sure what he wanted. Were they coming back because they regretted it? Because something changed? Or was this a continuation of whatever plan they had already set in motion? Nothing about Daniel felt predictable anymore, and that uncertainty scared me more than the empty highway ever did. Kareem noticed the way I tensed. He didn't ask anything at first, just followed my gaze to the mirror. His jaw tightened slightly. You know that car? I nodded. It's them. He didn't speed up or slow down. He just kept his eyes steady on the road. Do you want me to stop? My breath caught. The answer felt impossible. If I said yes, I'd be giving Daniel the chance to twist whatever story he was already forming. If I said no, I'd be running from my own husband. But wasn't he the one who abandoned me first? No, I whispered. Please, don't stop yet. Okay, he said, calm but firm. You're safe. You don't have to get out unless you want to. Hearing those words steadied me just enough to breathe again. Daniel's car kept a steady distance, close enough to be intimidating, not close enough to pass or signal anything. The tension climbed with every mile, every second. It felt like he wasn't following me. He was watching me, studying. The silence in the truck grew heavier. My mind ran through possibilities, each one worse than the last. Maybe he realized what he did and came back for me. But if that were true, why didn't he slow down or flash the headlights? Why didn't he call out the window or pull up beside us? Why did he drive like someone guarding a target instead of rescuing a wife? Then another thought hit me, darker than the others. Maybe they didn't expect me to find help. Maybe they thought I'd still be walking lost somewhere on the highway. And seeing me in another man's truck? I didn't know how Daniel would react to that, especially with his mother in his ear. Kareem glanced at me again. You want to tell me why he left you like that? The question was gentle, but it broke something open inside. I didn't know where to begin. The story wasn't just about one moment. It was months of slow changes, quiet tensions, things I tried to ignore because I wanted my marriage to work. I wanted to believe Daniel was still the man I loved. It's complicated, I murmured. His mother, she never liked me. She always thought I took him from her. That doesn't excuse leaving you on a highway, he said quietly. I know, I whispered. But with her it's never just small things. She finds ways to twist everything. And Daniel, he listens to her more than he listens to me. Kareem didn't respond right away, but the silence made it easier to keep talking, almost like the words had been waiting for the right moment. She always compared me to the women she wanted him to marry. She said I wasn't raised like they were. She said I wasn't good enough for him. And Daniel changed slowly, almost like he needed her approval for every decision, even ones about our life. Kareem nodded slightly. Sounds like someone who doesn't know how to separate being a son from being a husband. Exactly. My voice cracked. And lately everything I did was wrong. If I cooked something she didn't like, he picked a fight. If she said I looked disrespectful, he questioned why I wore certain clothes. If she said I was too emotional, he told me to stop acting dramatic. Saying it out loud made my chest feel tight, like I was finally hearing how bad it sounded. All the things I brushed aside, all the excuses I made, they didn't hide the truth anymore. And today, I swallowed hard. It felt like they planned something. She brought her phone out before anything even started. She kept recording me, waiting for me to react. But I didn't. And that made her angrier. Recording you? Kareem frowned. For what? I don't know, I whispered. But she said something before they drove off. Something I didn't understand at the time. What did she say? I hesitated, replaying the moment in my mind. Her voice had cut through the wind, sharp and triumphant. She said, "Now people will see what you really are." The words lingered again, just like they had earlier. Each time I repeated them, the meaning twisted deeper. Kareem exhaled slowly. Sounds like she was trying to set you up. But for what? I murmured. I didn't do anything. Sometimes you don't have to, he said. Some people create their own stories. I turned back to the window, my heart thudding as Daniel's car kept following. I couldn't see his face. The glare on the windshield made him look like a shadow behind the wheel. But I could imagine the tension inside that car. His mother whispering. Her eyes narrowed. Her phone in her hand. I didn't know whether they were angry, embarrassed, or still recording me from behind. The road curved ahead, leading toward the edge of a small town I'd never seen before. Buildings slowly appeared in the distance. Stores, houses, signs of life that made the air feel less suffocating. But Daniel didn't stop. He didn't slow down. He followed us right toward the town like he was determined to stay close, no matter what. Kareem cleared his throat. Do you want me to take you straight to the police station? The question froze me. I didn't know if I was ready for that. I didn't know if I had proof of anything beyond my own fear. And part of me still wasn't ready to see the marriage as broken as it truly was. I don't know, I whispered. That's all right, he said. You don't have to decide now. But you do need somewhere safe. Safe. The word struck me again, sharper this time, because I knew Daniel and his mother weren't just going to let this go. They wouldn't accept seeing me in someone else's vehicle. They wouldn't accept not being in control of the story. And if they were filming earlier, then they already had a narrative in mind. Which meant their next move wouldn't be small. As we entered the town, people walked along sidewalks, cars passed by, life continued normally, but tension still sat like a weight in my stomach. Kareem drove slowly, scanning the streets, probably looking for a good place to stop. Daniel's car turned in behind us, blending into the traffic but never far, never letting go of the chase. I didn't know what he wanted, but I knew something had changed forever. This wasn't just a bad day. This wasn't just a fight. This was the moment everything in my life started to unravel, piece by piece, choice by choice, until the truth behind their actions would finally surface. And deep down, I knew that truth was much darker than being left on a highway. It was something I hadn't uncovered yet, something that hadn't revealed itself, something waiting just around the corner. Kareem drove deeper into town, and with every turn, the streets grew narrower, the buildings closer, the sidewalks busier. But no amount of normal life around us eased the tightness in my chest. Daniel's car stayed behind us like a shadow glued to our back bumper. Not speeding. Not honking. Not trying to pull ahead. Just following. Watching. Waiting. The steady presence of that car made the tension heavier than anything I'd felt all day. Kareem noticed it too. He didn't say anything, but I saw the way his fingers tapped the steering wheel, slow and thoughtful. He was trying to understand the safest way to handle a situation he never asked to be part of. I appreciated that he wasn't reckless or impulsive. If he had been, I don't know how much worse the moment could have become. "We need to stop somewhere public," he finally murmured. "Somewhere with people around." My throat tightened. He won't stop following unless he gets what he wants. "And what does he want?" Kareem asked gently. I stared down at my hands. I didn't know anymore. Maybe he wanted me back in the car. Maybe he wanted to explain. Or maybe this was part of whatever plan his mother had been building long before today. The truck slowed near a small community park. Open space, a few families, kids playing by a fountain, people sitting on benches. Kareem parked close to the entrance where everything was visible. Public enough to be safe. But even then, Daniel didn't park directly behind us. He drove past slowly, circling the area like he was scanning every detail. Then he turned into the lot on the opposite side of the park and stopped, engine still running. I felt his eyes on me even from a distance. Kareem glanced at me, reading the fear in my face. "You don't have to get out," he said. "Not until you feel ready." But staying in the truck didn't make the fear go away. It made me feel trapped between the past and a future I couldn't see clearly yet. I slowly opened the door and stepped onto the sidewalk. The breeze brushed my skin gently, a strange contrast to the storm inside me. I could feel Daniel's gaze like a weight across the park. Kareem stepped out too but kept his distance, letting me breathe. Cars drove by, children laughed, someone pushed a stroller across the path. Yet the moment still felt unreal, like the world was moving normally while my life hovered dangerously on edge. Daniel's car door finally opened. He stepped out slowly, one hand still on the door frame, his posture stiff. His mother stayed inside, her face barely visible behind the window. I could tell her phone was in her hand. Of course it was. Daniel didn't shout. He didn't rush. He just watched me, waiting for me to walk toward him. Waiting for me to make the first move. And somehow, his stillness was scarier than any outburst could have been. Kareem subtly moved a little closer, not to interfere but to be there if I needed him. His calm presence was grounding. Daniel finally spoke, voice low enough that I could barely hear him across the distance. "Come here. We need to talk." There was no apology in his tone. No regret. Just expectation. As if abandoning me on a highway was a conversation starter instead of a betrayal. I didn't move. My legs felt rooted to the ground. His eyes narrowed slightly. Not in anger, but confusion, like he couldn't understand why I wasn't obeying, why I wasn't stepping right back into the life he controlled. Behind him, his mother leaned closer to the window, her phone raised just enough to catch everything. "Come here," Daniel repeated. "Now." Kareem took one step forward, not threatening, just protective. Daniel noticed and straightened. His posture changed, shoulders tightening, jaw clenching. His eyes flicked between us, reading the situation fast. "This isn't what you think," Daniel called out. "You're making this worse." A shiver ran through me. That sentence, the classic line people use to shift blame, hit harder than I expected. "I didn't do anything," I said quietly, but he didn't react. It was like he didn't hear me at all. Or maybe he didn't care to. His mother suddenly opened her door and stepped out, her voice loud enough to reach us. "We came back for you. Look at how you're acting. You're embarrassing yourself." "Embarrassing myself?" "After what they did." She held the phone up higher as if capturing proof of a story she had already written. A story where I was the problem. Where I was unstable, dramatic, ungrateful. Every angle, every breath, every pause, she filmed it like she wanted the world to see the version she created. My hands shook. My heart pounded. I couldn't let her twist the truth again. Not this time. But before I could speak, Kareem stepped slightly in front of me, not blocking me, just creating a buffer. "Ma'am," he said politely, "I think she needs space." Grace scoffed. "Space from her own husband? You don't know anything about our family." Kareem didn't raise his voice. "I don't need to. I just know she was alone on a highway. That's enough." Daniel visibly stiffened, his composure cracking. "She wasn't thinking clearly," he said sharply. "She walked out of the car on her own." The lie struck me like a slap. My breath caught. My fingers curled into fists. I felt the sting of betrayal all over again. And suddenly everything clicked. The video. The recording. The setup. They hadn't left me on the road out of anger or impulse. They left me so they could rewrite the story. Make me look unstable. Make me look like I ran away. Make me the problem. Grace raised her phone. "We have everything on video. Don't try to twist things now." She said it with confidence, like she was certain her version would be the one people believed. Daniel stepped closer across the lawn, slow and deliberate. "Come to the car, sweetheart. Let's go home and talk this out. Privately." The word sweetheart made my stomach turn. His tone wasn't gentle, it was controlled, practiced. And the way he emphasized privately told me everything. He wanted to remove me from witnesses, from safety, from anyone who could see the truth. Kareem held his ground, sensing the shift instantly. "She's not going anywhere, she's uncomfortable," he said firmly. Daniel's jaw locked. For the first time, a flicker of frustration crossed his eyes. He wasn't used to anyone challenging him. Not me, not strangers, not even reality when it didn't serve him. Grace lowered the phone slightly, whispering something to Daniel. Whatever she said made him straighten again, his stance sharpening, his eyes focusing on me with new intensity. "What exactly did he tell you?" Daniel asked Kareem coldly. "Did she make up a story?" "She does that sometimes." I felt the words physically, each one twisting tighter. This was the moment. The moment everything in my life was tilting towards something irreversible. Something explosive. Something that would decide not just our future but the truth itself. Kareem took a slow breath, calm but unyielding. "All I saw was a woman alone on a highway," he said. "And that's not something anyone imagines." Daniel's eyes darkened, not with violence but with calculation. He stepped forward again, closer than before, close enough that the tension in the air thickened like fog. "Come here," he repeated, voice low, unwavering. "This conversation isn't over." And he was right. It wasn't over. It was only beginning. The next step, the next decision, would lead straight into the climax of everything that had been building for months. And I could feel it in the air. The truth was seconds away from breaking open. The street was quiet except for the slow echo of footsteps behind her, and she instinctively tightened her grip on her bag. She didn't look back at first, thinking it was just someone passing by. But the feeling wouldn't leave. Something was wrong. When she finally turned, she froze. The figure from earlier, the one she thought had disappeared, was now standing halfway down the block, not moving, just watching her. His posture was calm, almost casual, but there was a sharpness in his gaze that made her chest tighten. She forced herself to keep walking, her heartbeat thudding like a warning drum. The night air felt heavier, as if everything around her was waiting for something to snap. She reached the corner, planning to take a different route home, but before she could step off the curb, her phone buzzed. The message sent a cold wave down her spine. It was a screenshot, an image of her entering the building earlier, taken from a high angle like security footage. But there was no caption, no explanation. Just the image. And beneath it, a timestamp only 5 minutes old. Her breath caught. Someone was not only following her. Someone had access to places she never expected. She tried calling the one person she trusted, hoping for calm, hoping for clarity. But the line rang once, then cut straight to voicemail, something that never happened before. It felt deliberate. Too deliberate. She hurried toward the main road where the lights were brighter and people were still moving around. But the moment she reached it, her path was blocked by a black car she recognized instantly. It belonged to someone she had pushed out of her life months ago, someone she thought she'd never have to face again. The door opened slowly and she felt her stomach drop. She wasn't ready for this, she wasn't ready for any of it. He stepped out with a faint smile, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. "You've been busy," he said, and his tone made it clear he knew far more than he should. She wanted to run, but her feet stayed planted. He wasn't supposed to be here. He wasn't supposed to know anything. She felt the twist hit her like a punch. Maybe the person following her wasn't working alone. Maybe this was bigger than she imagined. Before she could respond, he motioned toward the back seat. Someone else was inside. When the interior light flicked on, she gasped. It was a familiar face, someone she trusted deeply. Someone who was never supposed to be involved in this. Her mind spun, trying to connect the dots, but everything only made the situation more terrifying. Their expression wasn't angry or scared, it was apologetic. And that made it worse. The man stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You weren't supposed to find out yet. But since you did, things have to move faster now." His words were calm, but she felt the threat hidden underneath them. The world around her suddenly felt smaller, like the shadows were closing in. She realized she was surrounded, emotionally, physically, and in ways she still didn't fully understand. The second twist hit her all at once. This wasn't just about someone following her. This was a setup. A plan that had been building behind her back for longer than she knew. And the people she thought she could trust weren't on her side anymore. Her pulse hammered as he opened the car door wider, waiting for her to react. She took one slow step back, feeling the tension rise to its breaking point. Every instinct told her something explosive was about to happen. The truth was right there, just out of reach, and whatever came next would change everything she believed. But she wasn't ready to face it yet, not until she understood why they were really here, and what they wanted from her. She felt the world tighten around her as the man waited for her to step closer, his eyes steady like he already knew how the night would end. The person sitting in the back seat shifted slightly, and the guilt on their face grew heavier. She couldn't understand why they were there, why they had chosen to be part of something that had pushed her into fear and confusion. For a moment, the street noise faded, and all she could hear was her own uneven breathing. She lifted her chin, forcing herself to stay calm. "Just tell me what you want," she said quietly, but her voice carried strength she didn't know she still had. The man raised an eyebrow, almost amused, and circled around her as if testing the limits of her patience. "We wanted you to stop digging," he said. "You were getting too close. You saw things you weren't supposed to." His words confirmed what she already suspected. This wasn't random. This had been knitted together carefully, and she had walked straight into it without knowing. But there was still one thing she didn't understand: why someone she trusted had joined them. She turned toward the person in the car. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Their eyes lifted slowly and the truth finally came out. "I was trying to protect you," they whispered. "Everything started because of your father's files. He didn't leave you random papers, he left you proof. Proof these people didn't want exposed." The shock rushed through her, sharp and cold. She had always wondered why her father's old work seemed like a puzzle. Now it made sense. Too much sense. The man standing beside her let out a frustrated sigh. "Enough talking," he muttered, but before he could move, she stepped back and reached into her bag. She wasn't looking for a weapon. She was looking for the USB her father had hidden, the one they had been chasing her for. She tightened her grip around it, realizing she held the key to everything. And they realized it too. The man lunged forward, but she darted toward the street light where people stood nearby. He stopped instantly. He knew causing a scene would ruin everything. For the first time she felt the tension shift. She had leverage now. Real leverage. "You want this," she said, lifting the USB slightly. "Then you answer my questions. All of them." The man clenched his jaw, but he didn't move. His silence was the answer she needed. They weren't in control anymore, not the way they thought. Her friend stepped out of the car, tears in their eyes. "Please," they said. "Give it to me. I can fix this. I can protect you like I promised." She almost believed them. Almost. But then another realization hit her. The final twist, sharp as a blade. They weren't here because they betrayed her. They were here because they made a deal to keep her safe. The man hadn't brought them as an accomplice. He had brought them as leverage. If she didn't hand over the USB, they would be the one to pay the price. The apology she saw earlier wasn't guilt, it was fear. Her chest tightened as she understood. She wasn't the one trapped. They were. The man smirked, sensing the shift in her expression. "Now you see it," he said. "You choose how this ends." The crowd behind her shifted, unaware of the storm unfolding only a few feet away. She looked from the USB to the person she once trusted more than anyone. Letting them suffer wasn't an option, not after everything they had done to protect her behind the scenes. So she made her choice. She took a single step forward and held out the USB, but just before he could take it, she spoke clearly, her voice echoing off the quiet walls. "If anything happens to them, I release everything. I've already backed it up. You can take this, but you don't control the story anymore." For the first time all night, the man looked genuinely surprised. He hesitated, calculating. Then, slowly he took the USB, his expression tight with frustration. "You're smarter than I thought," he admitted. The tension broke like a stretched wire finally snapping. The man signaled his driver, and within seconds the car doors shut and the engine rumbled away into the darkness. She stood completely still until their taillights disappeared, her friend collapsing into relieved sobs beside her. But just as she thought the night was over, her phone buzzed again. Another message. Another unknown number. This time it contained only one line. That wasn't the only copy. Her breath caught. The story wasn't finished. Not yet. Her heart pounded as she stared at the message on her phone, the simple sentence glowing like a warning she wasn't prepared for. That wasn't the only copy. After everything she had faced, the night on the dark roadside, the fear, the confrontation, the betrayal, the truth hidden in her father's files, she thought she had reached the end of the storm. But that message felt like a reminder that danger could still be watching from a distance. She swallowed hard and turned to the friend who had been dragged into the chaos alongside her. They were still shaken, wiping their face with trembling hands. "What's wrong?" they asked when they noticed her expression. She showed them the text, expecting panic, but instead they let out a tired sigh. "I thought so," they whispered. "Your father? He wasn't the kind of man who put everything in one place. That USB was just what he left where someone could find it. The real stuff? It's probably scattered everywhere." They looked her in the eye, and in that moment she realized something important. This wasn't a threat. It was confirmation. The truth her father wanted exposed was too big to be buried by one stolen drive. And maybe he had always trusted her to finish what he couldn't. The air around her felt lighter, as if the night itself finally loosened its grip. She felt the fear shift into something steadier, something like determination. "Then we'll figure it out," she said softly. "We'll finish what he started, but in a way that keeps everyone safe." Her friend nodded, their voice steadier now. "You don't have to do it alone anymore." They walked toward the nearby bus stop together, the first hint of sunrise touching the sky. The night had taken so much from her, peace, trust, her sense of safety, but it had given her something too. Clarity. Answers. And the realization that family didn't always mean the people who shared your last name. Sometimes it meant the ones who stayed when everyone else drove away. As they waited for the bus, she finally allowed herself to breathe. The fear from earlier, the feeling of being stranded, manipulated, used, faded into a distant echo. She thought about her husband and his mother, the moment they left her on that highway, filming as they drove off with cruel confidence. She thought about the laugh she heard in the background, a laugh that felt colder than the wind on her skin. She wondered if they understood what they had set into motion. If they knew the truth she had uncovered. Or if they had only been pawns in something much bigger. Maybe she would never know. But she knew one thing for sure. She was done living in fear of people who thrived on control. She was done shrinking herself to fit their expectations. Their choices had led her here, scared, shaken, but stronger than she ever imagined. Her phone buzzed again, but this time it was a familiar name, her aunt. She hesitated before answering, unsure if she could explain everything she had been through. But the moment she heard her aunt's warm voice, she felt the tension in her shoulders ease. "Are you safe?" her aunt asked immediately. "We've been trying to reach you all night." She nodded even though they couldn't see her. "I'm okay. A lot happened, but I'm okay." It felt good to say the words out loud. Real. Solid. Truthful. She told her aunt she would come home, that she needed rest and time to understand everything she had learned. Her aunt insisted on picking her up and she didn't argue. For once, she let someone else take care of her. When her aunt arrived, she pulled her into a long, tight hug that made her eyes sting. No judgment. No questions. Just care. That embrace meant more than any apology her husband could have ever given. And in that moment she realized she didn't need him. Not his validation, not his explanations, not his excuses. The life she was walking toward didn't have room for someone who left her stranded in more ways than one. Over the next few days she slowly pieced everything together. She went through her father's old papers, talked to the few people he had trusted, and realized the truth he had been trying to reveal wasn't just a secret. It was a warning about the people her husband's family had ties to. They weren't criminals, but they were involved in things that blurred lines and created pressures her husband never knew how to resist. His mother, especially, had been desperate to keep their reputation spotless, even if it meant tearing someone else down. Understanding this didn't excuse their actions, but it allowed her to let go of the anger. She didn't need revenge. She didn't need to expose anyone publicly. She just needed peace. And she found it by choosing to step away completely. Her friend, the one who had been caught in the middle, stayed in touch, helping her understand the encrypted notes her father left behind. They worked together quietly and privately, making sure everything that needed to be revealed went to the right people, the ones who handled situations without causing harm. It took time, patience, and courage, but eventually, the weight her father carried became lighter on her shoulders. One afternoon, as she sat on her aunt's porch watching the sun dip low, she realized something important. Everything she had survived, the betrayal, the loneliness, the fear, had pushed her toward a version of herself she didn't know she could become. A stronger version. A clearer one. Someone who wasn't afraid to stand alone when she had to. She finally allowed herself to think about the moment she had been left on the highway. The headlights fading. The phone camera recording. The laughter. The humiliation. She didn't flinch anymore. Instead, she felt proud that she had survived what was meant to break her. Her aunt stepped outside and handed her a cup of tea. "You look lighter today," she said gently. "For the first time in a long time," she replied, smiling faintly. I feel free. Her aunt nodded with understanding. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most push us toward the life we were always meant to live. She looked out at the horizon, letting the warm breeze carry away the last pieces of fear. Maybe the message from earlier had meant to scare her, but instead it reminded her that truth had a way of surviving, just like she did. And as the sky shifted into soft shades of orange and pink, she finally felt the story closing, not with bitterness but with clarity, not with fear but with strength. The journey had been turbulent, messy, unpredictable, but it had led her here, to safety, understanding, and a future she was finally ready to walk into. She took a deep breath. Her past no longer controlled her. Her truth no longer frightened her. And for the first time since that night on the highway, she felt whole again.